have students finding out where they live through this process of education, through this process of consuming food from their region. And it would also help offset this idea of, oh, we don't want to go on beyond Court Street, that's our brick street, because that's weird. No, it's our home. Athens is more than just one street. So that's what engagement was. And so these values helped to inform our work. Now, as I said, I don't want to make it seem, look at this with rose-colored glasses. We met first bi-monthly, first of all, to chart out the products that culinary services needed and what the farmers were producing. And hey, there's a big chicken and egg thing here, because the farmer doesn't want to increase production if there's no guarantee of a market, and the university doesn't want to promise a contract if it can't see that the product is coming to them. So this requires what's called a relationship of trust building in the literature. There's a lot of discussion of how we need to build across communities, farming communities. It's not just related to farming, but there has to be some sort of relationship of trust between institutions and the communities that surround and support them. But this was a big problem. So we had to identify what products could be supplied by our region. And by our region, I'm talking about a 100-mile circle around from the town of Athens, Ohio, which does include West Virginia. So we're not just focusing on the state of Ohio, but we're focusing on our region. And what did we learn? We learned that bidding language, the actual language, we had to insert characteristics such as food miles, such as carbon footprint, the actual language of the bid, all of this being bids under $50,000 a year. And that's a state mandate. There is leeway to avoid purchasing the cheapest product if you take the bidding language and craft it to serve your values. So that was a big lesson, to figure out how to craft the bidding language to align with the needs of the university and what the producers could actually produce. We had to have consistent vendor outreach and communication. These are not natural conversation partners, a university administration and farming communities. That's why we had these community partners, Rural Action, which helped really to work with farmers. They worked with farmers on certification processes that were required by the university. The university required that all farmers from whom they purchased items would have to undergo what's called, some of you may have farmers or farming background, good agricultural practices. It's a program, the Ohio Department of Agriculture holds this training. It's a training that basically tells you good agricultural practices. Keep the poop away from the food is the bottom line there. But once you fulfill this certification process, that enables you to access a lot of different markets, institutional markets, supermarkets as well. So getting that communication was very important. Then we had to, on the university side, really push our student leaders to get out there and have our students talk about the importance of having apples from Ohio. We don't need to have apples come from Oregon and Washington State. We can have apples come from Ohio. So we had to have a very strong campus education and marketing outreach. And we were very fortunate at that time to have campus champions. So the head of culinary services, a marvelous woman named Gwen Scott, she was a firm believer in this initiative. She put her money where her mouth was. She came to the meeting, she did the work. We also had a very active dean of students, Jason Pena. He also believed in this. This is very top administration. So they set the tone that this change was important for the university. That's a really crucial, critical aspect, to have these campus champions. Because nobody at a lower level administration is going to stick their neck out unless the tone from the top says, yes, this is a value for the institution. Full disclosure, Gwen and her team are retiring at the end of this month, and Jason Pena left and took a job at New York University. So that's the problem with campus champions. You have people come and people go, and how do you maintain the momentum? So what were some obstacles? We have regional and institutional infrastructure. If you're familiar with Athens and Morgan and Perry County and Meigs County, we have very poor internet access. Very poor internet access. It's a big problem with health care providers, with every sector of our economy due to the poor infrastructure. So a lot of these farming communities in our area, they are also Amish, so they will have a computer outside the home, but the internet access is not reliable. So therefore, that was a problem that we really needed to find other ways of communicating. We also had an institutional framework issue that was a problem, and I just want to make ourselves aware of these kind of things we forget about. So this is a potato peeler and slicer. This is an industrial industrial processing machine. The one at Ohio University looks like that, except it's stainless steel. It's not this black color. It's about a little higher, a little taller than I am, and it's about as long as this table or so. It's a big round thing. This machine costs a lot of money. This machine has the job to peel potatoes, prepare them for French fries, or prepare them for hash browns. So this is a college campus. It's a very important job to be preparing the French fries. So the potatoes that go into this machine have to be a certain size, and the certain size that the potatoes have to be, size and shape, are the potatoes at the top of this slide. Those are the potatoes that have been bred for potato machines. You may know that there are more than 300 or 400 different varieties of potatoes. However, in the United States, we are down to a mere handful. And the predominant reason for that is potatoes are bred to serve McDonald's French fry empire. So our potatoes come in the size and shape that can be processed. Well, we didn't really think about that because the potatoes in our region are the potatoes in those quart containers. They could not be processed for French fries or for hash browns in the university system. This is an infrastructure restriction. So the university, the culinary services, wanting to be showing good faith, did buy some potatoes for use in like soups, but there's a lot of labor costs involved with peeling and slicing and preparing potatoes. That's why there's a machine to do it. But, so which comes first? The potato or the machine? It's the same thing like which comes first? The farmer growing the crop or the university extending a contract. These are the infrastructure constraints that you have to think about when we're trying to create change. Capacity to provide volume is what I just referred to. The university needs X number of white onions, and they need that white onions on what's called one drop, on a one-drop date. A major food contractor like Produce One, they can guarantee that 600 pounds of white onions will be there on a Saturday or on a Sunday night, and those onions will be there. It's difficult when you're starting with a small or mid-tier producer to be able, off the bat, to get that volume. So again, we come to those relations of trust. There's a building. There has to be a long-term investment. The long-term investment will feed the entire regional economy, but it's got to begin somewhere. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, the very important question of non-alignment of growing season with academic calendar. So that required a lot of labor costs in a downtime in the summertime for processing. So processing, for example, tomatoes, a recent one element that the university just recently bought a couple 100 pounds of Roma tomatoes. They are processing those tomatoes for use in pasta sauces and other preparations throughout the academic year. But their labor staffing is low during the month of August prior to the beginning of the school year, because guess what? They use students. So now they've got the tomatoes coming in, and they've got to bring in quickly workers to process them really quickly and freeze them so they can demonstrate that they're being good on the good path of changing procurement processes. But none of these steps can be underestimated in the difficulty of getting the institution to change its perspective and in getting a farming community to respond, because as we know, food does not pop up overnight. Interesting thing, there's a research from 2011 that says Ohio does not have the capacity, current farming capacity, to feed itself, the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio has the potentiality to feed itself, but farming in this state has declined, and there's also been a shift into monoculture farming, so single crop farming, so with corn and soybeans. So that the state of Ohio needs to have investments in farming if we want to have food security. This is not a feel-good issue. This is an issue of actual food security. So when we looked at this, these obstacles, you ask, well, what did we learn? The grant that I received ends this year in 2024. As I said, many of the campus champions have retired or gone to other universities. My program, my food studies program, was eliminated in a budget cut. So where do we go from here? What have we learned? The key is to identify gatekeepers. This is a burden on community members and community organizations to find out, gee, who's in charge? Well, we know this person retired, who's taking over, and how can we cultivate that relationship? So gatekeepers, identifying the gatekeepers within an institution is critical. Capacity building and contract guarantees. This is a very hard nut to crack. As we just said, capacity building, nothing pops up out of the ground overnight. Contract guarantees, Does a university want to promise taxpayer money when they have nothing in hand? So this is a real difficult lesson to think about. And then one area that has been underdeveloped is this concept of aggregation. So we don't want to have, we have a large system of small farmers. Small farmers by themselves, it's too much burden to identify a gatekeeper and identify these certifications. So aggregating, starting a mid-tier supply system, not this huge global food system, but a mid-tier supply system through aggregation, having a community organization pull together all the farmers in a region. There are examples of this with Organic Valley and its dairy cooperatives. So there are cooperatives throughout, aggregation model cooperatives in many places in the United States. And that's one way to address volume and address capacity building, because it can happen over time. Obstacles. In obstacles, we have weak infrastructure, we have the problem with internet access, and we have certification requirements. All those are simply things that are beyond, the first two are beyond the individual level of the farmer to handle by themselves. Certification requirement, my grant paid for the certification process for farmers in our region, and as I said, that grant is ending. So here's our takeaway. This was the logo, neighborhood local product, 100 miles. This logo is in the Ohio University cafeterias. Where this logo is placed indicates that food was procured within 100 miles of campus. The bottom line of this is that price, the lowest price, is not the best value. It does not equal the best value. Procurement is an instrument for healthier, safer food systems. And regional food procurement keeps the dollars at home. And that's what we want. Don't ship the dollars out of state. Keep them here. And so if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
So I'm curious, in the end, is there like a percentage that you're able to transfer to regional suppliers of the overall, supply of food for the university?
Well,
it's a monumental task.
Yeah, it's a monumental task. So in 2019, we were successful with 16% of purchasing from locally designated using this marker, 16%. We had a goal of reaching 20% by 2025. But of course, the university closed down in March of 2020 with COVID. And so the disruption in food services really is not yet back fully where it was. Though this year, Ohio University has the largest freshman class ever. 2023, we are ending with 15% purchasing. So that's better than nothing. The main concern is that the loss of this institutional knowledge with people getting, what are you going to say? Don't go to New York University, stay in Athens, Ohio. I mean, what can you tell someone who has a new job? And that is that relations of trust, bringing the next level of administrators into the fold. And that's hard work. The information part, the education part, that has longer legs right now than the institutional staffing.
So I'm assuming that to mean that even though you're locally sourcing 16%, you're probably paying a percentage more than what you would pay if you would use.
The university will not pay a penny more.
So then the value proposition, so then it is comparable price-wise.
It's up to a point, up to this point, because yes, up to this point. But as a whole, when we're talking about this value, aligning the values, if we think about federal procurement and that vast amount of money that the USDA and the DOD spend, their bottom line, they don't enter into these kind of negotiations. Their bottom line is focusing on the lowest price does not lead them to the value statement that they are professing. At Ohio University, right now, they're meeting the price point, mostly, but it is on a very limited basket of items. Items their farmers are willing to commit to that price. And in the retail market, at farmers markets, sometimes are giving up, farmers are giving up a higher retail price to sell to the university in the hopes of getting larger volume contracts.
I guess my basic question is, as an individual, I'm educated on this now, what can I do?
Do you have family members who are going to a university, a college?
Yeah, my niece goes to Ohio U.
Oh, to OU. Well, she can join the Dining Services Committee. The committee has 4 or 5 student positions, and there's a lot of activity. She can also become involved with the Ohio University Student Farm. I was instrumental in creating the student farm, and that student farm has programs to try to get student-grown vegetables into the university food system. So she hasn't been, do you know what year she is? Oh, well, that's perfect. And reminder that she can be any major, any college, but that the student farm is for her, and that the Dining Services Committee is a great way to meet new people and get really in the nitty-gritty of the university system. And make it known that she'd like to have an apple from Ohio.
So my experience with dealing with state purchasing or any kind of institutional purchasing is the purchasing department.
Yes.
And so how adaptive were they to this process, and can they be the method of continuing what you're trying to accomplish?
We were fortunate because the Director of Culinary Services, it's its own unit. She had her procurement people directly involved with this. They came to most of our meetings when we had that we had a menu of what could be produced, what price. They were there at the table, literally, doing this kind of back and forth with us. So there was buy-in at that level. But now, the higher up is retiring. It's unclear the new position, the position of the incoming staff. That level of procurement, they are marking this local metric. They're using this metric. They will continue to use the metric because this metric is in the university sustainability plan. But we want to grow it from 15%. So there is, on that level, there has been a full integration into this concept. It's just without the top saying, continue to make this a priority, we're in uncertain times. And also there's a new president, there's been an interim president, now there's a brand new president. The prior president was very committed, at least on paper, to this initiative. Good luck. Thank you. Well, the money runs out in December. That's the problem, keeping it going without money. Sorry? Well, we're working on it. We're trying. The USDA has put forth an enormous amount of money for regional food system development. So my community partners, Rural Action, has benefited from that USDA grant of building regional food procurements. So then there has to be, but there isn't a pathway for that into the university currently, so we have to look in other ways. But this new USDA funding for regional food systems has been very important in the past 4 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much, Teresa.